Steve, in addition to just these doctors, that are biased, the in-house doctors and the doctors outside that are hired, we know that they also use these third-party companies that are supposedly set up to do these independent exams. Do you guys see that as well?
Correct. There's one, BMI, I think, is one I see a lot. You'll see multiple doctors underneath that company where they'll go in and they'll send just the files over for the review, and it's almost the same cookie-cutter mold review and the response that they will give. Another thing with a specific question. So how independent is it when it's a company that employs doctors for the sole purpose of doing these types of things? And a lot of people say it's a doctor for hire. It's the insurance company buying what they want. And essentially, there's conferences to train these doctors on how to, perfect their reports, and they're going out specifically to them with the intent to be able to come up with a reasonable basis for them to try to deny the claim, no matter how unreasonable it may really seem to an average person, how much common sense is involved in it.
Well, let me tell you about two things you just said. One of them, which was in another case I just read before today, Hartford Insurance Company would use an outside independent company to do their exams. So this outside company, not Hartford, that's supposed to be independent, over a 5-year period was paid more than $13 million. And that company's job was to go out and hire doctors for Hartford. So, how independent and how neutral are they? Not only that, in a deposition of somebody from this University Disability Consortium, the president of the company, he said, we usually charge $300 an hour, but for Hartford, we're going to charge $225 an hour because they give us volume of work. So this is the independent company who did a negotiated rate for doctors to give reports to them. It's very scary. You mentioned one other thing. There was another company called MLS, which was a company out of Michigan, and they did a lot of work with Liberty Mutual, Cigna, and MetLife. And there was a case a couple years back where the MLS, this independent company, manipulated the report beyond what the doctor they had hired had given them. So now you have an issue of this independent company who wants to please their employer, the insurance company, who's manipulating reports to make them look favorable for the insurance company, so the insurance company will keep hiring this so-called independent company.
And Greg, we've actually seen in many of the conferences that we've attended, these companies set up, their booths right there at the conference to essentially solicit that insurance company's business.
Right. I think the last trade show we were at in New York, there were like 8 different independent medical exam companies that are going to find doctors for all the insurance companies.
Right.
I have a lot of their free giveaway stuff in my office.
And then another thing that was interesting in one of the cases that I just saw, there was a particular doctor, a Suresh Mawahar, who was from an internist in Fremont, California, who in 202 cases that he was assigned to review for Hartford between a 2-year period, 202 cases, 193 of those people were not disabled. So 193 of them were not disabled out of 202. And keep in mind, of those 202 people, there were treating physicians that said each of those 202 people were disabled. So this particular doctor, who either reviewed files or examined them, found that 193 of those doctors were wrong in what they said to those patients. And then basically that doctor's comment in one of the cases was that anybody can work a desk job regardless of reported pain and physical limitations, which we know is not always the standard. And then Steve, you said something about when we were doing research for today's show about the training of these independent medical examiners and how this is a business for them to solicit the insurance companies. And we found a seminar through which anybody out there can go to. It's at www.seek.com, SEAK, that just took place April 22nd through the 23rd at Naples, Florida, which was the 2010 Independent Medical Examination Best Practices, Achieving Excellence and Success. And in a summary it says, past SEEK IME attendees have substantially increased the success of their IME practices, have been able to raise their fees, and have vastly improved their IME practices. And inside one of the key lectures, which was an hour and 45 minute lecture was Identifying Symptom Magnification, Fraud and Malingering, Advanced Techniques. Faculty will discuss and demonstrate with the use of videos the proper symptom magnification definitions, injury red flags, non-organic signs and their meanings, how to identify and demonstrate any inconsistencies, specific tests for symptom magnification, the proper use of functional capacity evaluation, and the role of surveillance. And this was a 2-day conference, and there was about 15 different topics, and actually one of the top lecturers there was an independent examining doctor, Dr. Anthony Dordo, who we've seen on many times, who makes his practice doing most of his work for insurance defense companies, although he'll tell you otherwise. All right, so Cesar, we talked a lot about the bias of these companies, the bias of the outside third-party companies that are supposedly independent, but what, if anything, could you recommend that people who are watching could do to try to protect themselves during a alleged independent medical exam?
Sure. Well, in some states, for instance in Florida, a claimant has the right to take a third party with them to that independent medical examination in individual disability insurance cases. So if you have a private policy, you in fact have a right to take your attorney, court reporter, a videographer to that independent medical examination with you to make sure that everything that will later be said to have occurred during that independent medical examination actually occurred the way they say it is. In other cases, in ERISA cases, it's kind of a gray area. Often the insurance companies would allow you to do that, take someone with you, or to have a videographer there to record the whole thing.
So would you recommend to try to videotape these independent exams if available?
I think you have to just deal with it on a case-by-case basis. Not every independent medical examination calls to have a videographer there or calls to have a court reporter there to take everything down, but I think it's a good way to ensure that things happen the way they say it happened during that independent medical examination.
Right. I think at a minimum, definitely bring a third party with you or someone so that you can dispute anything that is said or happens that you want to dispute. So, well, thank you for watching another episode of Disability Insurance Law TV. If you need any assistance with your claim and you'd like to contact us at any time, feel free to speak with us. My name is Gregory Dell. This is Cesar Gavidia and attorney Stephen Jessup, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future.